The Bible's book of Genesis tells us the story of the creation of the universe, earth, and humans by the God of Abraham. But when God becomes disappointed by his creation, he decides to flood the earth in order to drown every single living creature, including babies and animals. He chooses Noah, his wife, their sons, and their wives as the only survivors, by instructing Noah to build an ark and load it with 2 of every species of animals. Hello, residents of the universe. Welcome to Ways to Human. My name is AJ. Using the timeline of events outlined in Genesis, experts have calculated the estimated date of Noah's Ark story. What you see on the screen right now is a chart that I made using the website Answers in Genesis. These numbers accurately match what I have personally read in the Bible, and the resulting mathematical calculations are what is known as young earth creationism. These dates were calculated by Reverend Usher, who used the ages given in the Bible for each man born since creation, as well as the ages at which each man fathered a son, starting with Adam and ending with Noah. So according to this data, the global flood from Noah's Ark story allegedly happened in the year 2348 BCE. Why are these calculations so important? They matter because historical events we record in textbooks used to teach history in school are based on physical, archaeological, geological, and scientific evidence. So we need to analyze Noah's Ark story in the Bible with the same skepticism and critical thinking that we analyze any other historical event. And that's exactly what we're doing today. Now, with the biblical dates provided for the Noah's Ark story timeline, we can now look at other evidence of existing societies around the world. With such a massive loss of life due to a worldwide disaster of that scale, it should be really easy to find geological evidence of a global flood, as well as fossils of all living creatures, including humans, laid out on the same rock layer used to geologically date that time period. This will demonstrate that the massive loss of animal, human, and marine plant life happened all at the same time. If you trust the science that gives you fossil fuels to fuel your car, then you have no reason to doubt the same science being used to determine whether a global flood causing a mass extinction happened as told in Noah's Ark story. In addition to physical evidence, we should also see a pause in record keeping for that specific time period until the population reproduced enough to repopulate those other areas of the earth and resume societal activities, and the cultures would completely change. Lucky for us, many ancient societies have kept incredibly detailed records for their rulers as well as for their citizens, including things like land deeds, cattle records, birth, death information, educational material, and other public records. So, what can we find about other societies during the alleged global flood in Noah's Ark story? Let's go back to the year 2348 BCE. The Egyptian dynasties ruled Egypt starting at around 4300 BC until the Roman and Byzantine empires in 640 in the current era. This timeline actually puts Egypt as having existed before the biblical earth creation date of 4004 BC. Unas was the Egyptian king during the year of Noah's Ark flood. He was the 9th king of the 5th dynasty. There were 25 additional dynasties after King Unas' death. The Nile, which runs through Egypt, floods yearly. However, the Egyptians learned to predict this flooding and there is no evidence that all of Egypt's citizens died at any time during the 5,000-year period of Egyptian rule. All the way around the world, in Peru, South America, the coral civilization was in full swing. Radiocarbon analysis at the archaeological site confirms that the development of this civilization can be placed between years 3000 and 1800 BCE. They had fully developed complex socio-political structures, monumental architecture including pyramids, evidence of ceremonial functions and symbols of many different gods. Also discovered were remains of the quipu method, in which knots were tied onto cords connected to one another. This was a complex ancient Andean civilization record-keeping system used to keep tracks of numerical data. And lastly, one of the most prolific and well-known societies in ancient civilizations were the Sumerians. They ruled Mesopotamia, or modern Iraq. The Sumerians settled in this area around 5000 BC until their fall in 1750 BC. At the peak of Sumerian society during the early dynastic period, which lasted from 2900 BC to 2334 BC, they developed some of the most significant cultural advances, including the first known cities, the development of writing, and the establishment of structured government. The government in Sumer was a form of theocracy, meaning that their government and their religions were one. Kings were believed to have come from the heavens, and priests claimed that gods gave them divine guidance so they could rule their lands. And if you think about it, Moses used a similar method to lead his people out of Egypt in the Exodus story. But all of this happened during the biblical story of Genesis and about 1,000 years after the story of Noah's Ark. Again, with no break in record keeping during their almost 4,000 years rule of Mesopotamia. In fact, the Sumerians had such an abundant record keeping that we have found over 2 million clay tablets with their writings. But so far, only about 30,000 have been translated. What's interesting is that some of the stories told in the Sumerian tablets, which are called the Enuma Elish, actually are very similar to the stories told in Genesis about the creation of the earth, Adam and Eve, and Noah's Ark. Many experts have suggested that the Bible stories could have potentially been plagiarized or inspired from the Enuma Elish stories. These were told thousands of years before the stories in the Bible. But don't take my word for it. Look up the Enuma Elish, the creation story, as well as the flood story, which is called the Epic of Gilgamesh. Now let's quickly analyze the potential for a global flood. Currently, water covers about 70% of the Earth's surface, but a recent study found that about 3 billion years ago, 90% or more of the surface of the Earth could have been covered in water. Some of this water is now inside the Earth's mantle and is referred to as the planet's mantle water storage capacity. This amount has been changing as the interior of the planet continues to cool, but this process has been going on for billions of years. If scientists have been able to calculate the amount of water on Earth billions of years ago, they could easily be able to determine if the Bible story of Noah's Ark was accurate and true. We have the technology and the understanding to do so. Unfortunately, we have no evidence of such an event. And while Noah's Ark has a lot of other inconsistencies and unrealistic claims, I think that this is truly the most scientifically accurate method that we can use to place Noah's Ark on the list of fiction stories from the Bible, and to corroborate with historical data that the global flood is very unlikely to have happened as told in the Bible. Until next time, don't forget to like and subscribe.